Hello, my name is Michael Burke, and I'm speaking to you today as a regular contributor to a publication online called Socialist Economic Bulletin. I want to speak about the autumn statement. There's already been some good analysis, a lot of rubbish in the main media, but some good analysis from a variety of sources about what the actual content of the autumn statement is. But I wanted to look behind some of those analyses about the underlying problems of the British economy, the Tory failure to address them, and what that means for us going forward. If it's okay with you, I'm now going to share a quick PowerPoint presentation. Essentially, the problem that the Chancellor set out is correct, the problem of low growth. The difficulty is that he has done nothing to address that. And that's because he has a failed economic ideology, which was inherited from his predecessors and began in 1979, really, to be implemented by Margaret Thatcher. And I'll speak about that ideology throughout this. But in effect, what we see is that ideology leads to slow growth. As the graphic shows, in the 30 years before Thatcherism, GDP almost trebled. In the 30 years after, that's effectively the period from 2010 to, up to 2010, from 1980, it didn't even double. And in the period since 2010, we've seen one crisis after another, which means that the economy has barely grown at all. And that's the policy, that's the ideology of weak growth that Hunt and the Tory government and many others still share. He actually called it, the Chancellor called it, an autumn statement for growth. So it's a bit unfortunate for him, but terrible for the rest of us, that actually the OBR cut the growth forecasts, which is the first chart here, the items in green. Those blocks all represent weaker growth, almost as far as the eye can see. And crucially, inflation is going to be higher than previously forecast. And we're not going to get growth, according to the OBR, that even touches 2% over the foreseeable future, which is, in effect, economic stagnation. Now, this is a long-term problem. It's true that the rest of the world's economy is slowing, but the performance of the British economy over the long term has been really outstandingly bad. And if we compare it to other leading economies in the world, the growth rate in Britain of real GDP is much slower than even the United States, which itself is slowing considerably, and ridiculously lagging the leading strong growth economy of the world, which is China. And you can see from the chart that this is a long-term and therefore structural problem that the British economy has faced. What the problem reflects is a very weak level of British investment in fixed capital, which we used to call the means of production. What we see in the second chart here, the red line, that's British levels of fixed investment, which are both weaker than the rest of the world and declining. And that's the key decisive factor which explains the long-term relative underperformance and weakness of the British economy. Now, the Chancellor's statement for growth, as he called it, relied heavily, in fact, overwhelmingly, on a big cut in business taxes to specifically to spur investment. I.e., the idea is that in effect now, it will cost companies nothing to invest, they can write it off, all of it permanently against tax, and taxpayers will be paying for it. And yet, in the first chart, we see what the OBR's forecast for business investment is as a share of GDP, and it's declining. So the giveaway in terms of taxation isn't going to work. It isn't going to work in terms of spurring in business investment, and therefore it's not going to work in terms of reviving growth. It's a huge giveaway with no positive impact at all. And this is not supposed to be a dry or irrelevant or abstruse economic presentation. It's about real people's lives. It's about the fact that this is going to be one of the worst ever long-term performances of the British economy, the biggest fall in living standards, the only parliament where living standards will be certainly lower than at the beginning of the parliament. That is some incredible economic performance, and it's a function of Tory economic policy. The other big measure in the autumn statement was the cut in national insurance for employees. Now, this is presented, as many tax cuts are, as benefiting ordinary people. It's not true. It's logical that if tax rates are applied and then cut, the biggest beneficiaries are those earning the most, because they're the ones who have the higher amounts of tax to pay. And this is represented here, a very nice chart by the IPPR, which shows just exactly that, what the impact of the cuts to national insurance are in relation to different incomes. And what you see is that the bulk, nearly half of all the benefit goes to above average earners, and including extremely high earners. Hardly any of the benefit goes to the bottom and middle layers of income earners. This is a tax cut for the highly paid, along with, as we've just seen, a big pointless tax giveaway to big business. It's classic austerity, giving money to the highest paid and giving money to big business. And the effect of all this in terms of politics seems to be quite clear. In effect, what the Tory party is doing is daring Labour to go along with its plans to not reverse these. And at the same time, as the OBR itself points out, not some left think tank, Hunt's projections and his keeping to the fiscal rules can only be met by really eye-watering austerity and huge cuts in local government and huge cuts in departmental spending. That's local services and public services to you and me. And it seems that Labour is going to fall for this, that Labour is going to not criticise, not vote against, and indeed implement these big changes in terms of tax, which are no benefit to the economy generally, as we've seen, but do benefit big business shareholders and the highest earners. So in summary, there's no proposals at all to improve growth significantly, nothing to raise general living standards, huge cuts to local and public services, and nothing for those on medium and low incomes. The tax cuts that we've seen benefit big business and the highest earners, and quite shamefully, welfare cuts to disabled people and to people who are sick. On the government's own forecast, these won't provide any significant savings at all. It's just to grab nasty headlines in the run-up to a general election. The whole package, of course, is a bribe to big business and to high earners ahead of the election. Lots of PR that this will provide a benefit more widely when it won't. And then cruel and vindictive cuts in welfare payments to those who need them most. This is classic austerity, robbing workers and the poor to pay big business and the rich, and it should be opposed. And what's needed is a political and economic program to do that. Thank you.